So two things can be true at once. We're at the same time probably the most informed people on the planet and certainly in history. And at the same time, because we don't have context for some of the information we're getting, we really don't know what the heck is going on. The housing crisis situation, or the word housing crisis, is very much to do with that. Just this past week, I was talking to somebody in an area that I just sold a home in 3 days. So clearly a high demand area. And I caught this person, this homeowner, completely off guard with the fact that I said, well, first of all, we sold in 3 days, which he's amazed because he thought everything was sitting on the market. And the other thing I told him, the kind of inventory that we have on the board in general. And he was utterly surprised because in a housing crisis, you wouldn't think we have this much inventory. And so that's something that I want to talk about in this month's market update. So let me get out of this real quick and give you guys the June 2024 housing market update. I'm not going to do another of this. So if I do this perfectly, forgive me. I'm going to be very transparent, get you guys the information that you guys need. So beautiful people, welcome to June of 2024. Just got the numbers a few days ago. And listen, this one's actually really important. I know not everyone always watches the whole video all the way through, but I'm going to cover very important stuff. The first rate drop in 4 years, it just happened a few days ago, from 5 to 4.75. And I'm going to tell you about the 21.7%. That's really, really important for people to understand because the market right now is not a normal market. And first of all, people don't know much about the normal market to begin with, but right now, the way things are going, some people are utterly confused. I'm trying to really clear things up so you guys, by the end of this, you'll have absolutely a great idea as to what's happening in the market right now, probably more than most realtors, frankly. So 23 versus 12, and that's an inventory thing while in a housing crisis. So this whole housing crisis thing really needs to be articulated much better than it has been. Quite frankly, I mean, some things are true, some things are almost not true at all. And I'm going to mention something about the buyers, what buyers and sellers need to be doing this month. That's very, very important. I'm going to give you some amazing pictures of homes that I've actually sold really, really well. So if you're a seller, if you don't like this other stuff, maybe fast forward towards the latter end of the video and you can see some of the pictures that I've shown of listings that I've actually sold really well, and you have a good idea as to why, and maybe you get some tips out of that as well. And at the end, I'm going to mention something that's a rental guarantee program for those of you who have investment properties or are thinking of getting to investment properties. And of course, it was inevitable because the way things are going with the landlord and tenant board, things are not looking good for landlords. And so there's interestingly kind of an insurance, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that towards the end. So moving right along, let me go with, let's see, there's the first rate drop in 4 years. And of course, you guys saw this on the news. But before I get to that, guys, I do this absolutely, obviously for free. I want to get information out to people so they have a good idea of what the market is doing. I provide valuable information about the GTA housing market, very specific, not Canada-wide, which is utterly irrelevant. As a matter of fact, even the GTA should really be nailed down to very specific areas that you guys probably live in. But this gives a general idea of the market, and obviously, you feel free to contact me. Don't hesitate to give me a shout, to reach out. My information is at the bottom. Of course, my email, my website's there, askandrew.realtor. All my information is right there. Contact me, ask me about your area. I'll give you information with no obligation, no pressure, no nothing. You'll have a nice conversation. So moving right along. So here's the inflation. And we'll talk about rates. Of course, inflation's tied in with that. April, the month before last, we're in June now, was 2.7. And you get a general idea of what's happening. 2.9, 2.8, 2.9, 2.7. That's kind of where things are going. And of course, I circled in red. That's, June of 2022, which was at its highest. If you take out mortgage and house debt because of the interest rates, if you take those things out of the CPI, out of the algorithm, out of the formula that makes the inflation numbers, the number will actually be much lower. We're talking like just over 1%. So keep that in mind. Part of the 2.7 is because of the high interest rates, is because of the high cost of living right now, mainly because of the interest rates. So that kind of counteracts. You raise the interest rates, it makes it more expensive. It actually increases inflation a little bit. So the point being, that 2.7 number could actually be much, much lower if the rates were lower to begin with, in terms of the mortgage rate, if that makes sense. So, of course, Bank of Canada cut it down to 4.75, which was I think, a good move. I know, you want to keep the market lower and such, but it was interesting to see how the language changed from the past few months where we're talking about, affordability and these kind of things. Suddenly, they're starting to talk about equity. Like, equity is an important thing now. People have been spending years and years and years paying off their mortgages. They have equities in their home. Suddenly, that becomes important to the government. Interesting how that works, and there might be an election coming up sometime. Oh, that's quite a coincidence. So, we've come a long way in fight against inflation. Please notice the line underlined. Hints there could be more. And it hinted that more rate cuts could follow. If you look on the right, Morgan Stanley sees 3 more rate cuts. I've talked to people who are very much involved in the mortgage industry and in finance, and they're saying 2 to 3 more cuts this year, very likely, maybe even in July, depending on how the housing market, among other things, goes this month of June and in July. As a matter of fact, let's move on to that, because that's going to be very important. Guys, this is huge. And let me move myself and minimize myself a little bit here. So these are numbers on the left, is the year over year on the right, monthly, as per our usual arrangement. Hopefully you watch these because this is really good info. I haven't seen this anywhere else on YouTube. So focus here specifically. You'll notice a 21.7% that is circled in red. Now, that's the number I was mentioning in the very beginning page. Now, why that's important is sales. Price-wise, we're down 2%. That's almost the same thing. There's hardly a difference there. However, there is a big difference in sales of May last month of 24 versus 2023. And that difference is almost 22%. Now, why would that happen? It's interesting to know. Why would that be happening? Well, maybe it's because people were waiting for this announcement of rate hikes, or rate cuts. And that has been a big thing happening in the market. Buyers often wait for some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. And to be honest with you, the rates, in terms of the rates, a rate cut was it. Just the idea of a rate cut increased the market a little bit in terms of sales activity. And with the rate cut now, inevitably those 22%, those 2,000 or so people, sales that did not happen in May, they're going to happen in June or July. So we're going to make up those sales because of what's happened in terms of the rate cut. So my point being that whatever sales are low last month, we're going to catch up. So it's going to continue to be a busy market, especially with the way rates have the possibility of coming down again, which is a really big deal. See, this isn't like a normal year that you and I would be discussing maybe before the COVID times. It isn't, because normally, if you look at the two green circles there, you have new listings, 18,000 versus 15. So we're listing significantly more, about 21% more new listings versus May of last year. But even more importantly, look at the active listings. We ended May with 21,000, almost 22,000 active listings versus not even 12 in May of 2023. So consider your mind at that point, 22 versus 12. I'll show you the 23 later. The point is we're darn close to double inventory in the month of May. And there's still sales. Like I said, I sold a home in 3 days just last week. So it's still happening, and yet we have this high inventory. That only happens in a very busy market where there is talk of rate cuts. So this isn't like a normal year. In the summer, it won't be like a normal summer. In fact, there'll probably be more activity this summer than the past few summers in a while. Why? Because the rate cuts. Because people who have been waiting for a long time have finally got the light at the end of the tunnel. They finally got the motivation, although I've been telling them for months to get into the market, to finally get into the market. And inevitably, it creates demand, that pent-up demand comes in and creates for a lot of sales. So property days on market is still pretty high. It's at 28 versus 20, and that's because of the huge inventory that we have. But still, the fact that we're still selling at a pretty good pace and will be selling at a good pace, that's a pretty good sign. And of course, look at the active listings month over month. We've increased listings. We've increased new listings as well, April versus May. So the market is really picking up to the point where now we're at a pretty high number. So let me move on to the next one. So this is my MLS screen, June 9th. So this is just a day ago. Why I did this? I counted 23,000 active listings. That is huge. I honestly don't remember when the last time we had 23,000 active listings. It's been years since then. And if you look at, of course, the GTA, I did that there to make sure that you guys see that it's, I'm not just all of Ontario or anything of that nature. But there's a very high numbers. Now, it's interesting to note that while people are mentioning housing crisis, realtors are dealing with a very high inventory. Isn't it seem that those two things are uncorrelated? Let's see, move on. So here's something that was in an article just a few days ago, and this is obviously a picture from a very old article, and this is acute housing shortage in Toronto. This is just post-war. This is like 1947. There's the date. So Toronto housing crisis, and this is very much how people are thinking. As a matter of fact, if I just move myself real quick here, take a look. I Googled this, Toronto housing crisis in Google, and if you look on the right, it says 19,500 results. So the point is, plenty of people are looking this up, and I came only in 0.2 seconds. So this is something that people are thinking in terms of the houses. They think housing shortage, but in reality, what is actually happening in Toronto and a lot of the places like Toronto, Vancouver is another example, is that the real issue is shortage of affordable housing. And I've talked about this last month, and it bears repeating because the problem is not the inventory. There's lots of inventory for people to buy. For buyers that are capable, there's lots of inventory. In fact, right now, if you're a buyer, you should really be getting in. I'll be talking about that soon. But the problem is, of course, affordable housing and affordable rentals. And that is a problem that is, frankly, I'm not sure how to fix. Certainly big cities have not done it. There's rent control, there's government housing, and those kinds of things. But I think we all know historically where that ends up. So that's a tough thing for others to deal with. But I'm a realtor. I don't deal with that stuff. I deal with the housing market as it is. And the reality is inventory is incredibly, incredibly high. Move myself here and move along. So here's something for you guys. A quick summary in terms of buyers specifically. As I showed you those screens, I'm not trying to bore you with information. I'm showing you 23,000. There's 23,000 active listings. It basically should be a buyer's market, but it isn't. The reason it isn't, the only reason it isn't a buyer's market at 23,000 active listings is because of the rate cuts and because of the environment that we are currently in. That pent-up demand is going to come in. It's going to continue to create enough demand for things to sell. And so the market is going to continue to be busy and be much more balanced. And in some areas, actually more of a seller's market, even though we're at 23,000. So can you kind of see why it would be important for you to have the actual numbers and deal with somebody who actually knows specifically what the numbers are in your area? Because generally speaking, it almost doesn't make sense. This much inventory, demand versus supply. This much supply, there must be a lot of demand. There is. And you have to know where the demand is and where the demand isn't. So an easy example of something that's happened. Psychology of buyers. If you're a buyer, please understand, whenever you're waiting for anything, know that many, many other people are not. In the first 4 days of this month, June, we had 163 days, an average of 163 sales per day. Then on the 5th of June is when the rate cuts happened. From the 5th to the 8th, after the rate cut, we jumped up to an average of 227 sales per day. Often people will say, well, eventually this market's going to get buyers to start thinking about getting into the market. The reality is, guys, things happen much faster, especially these days. With the internet and everything else, things happen much, much faster. So if you're a buyer out there, like that first sentence on there, get on it. There's not a shortage of inventory. There's plenty of inventory, and you need to make a move on it because, frankly, a lot of people already have. Some neighborhoods on the GTA are still seeing multiple offers, many are not. I just mentioned that it's all area dependent, which is why I leave my information at the bottom. You can always contact me. I'll give you a rundown of where you're at, where you're looking specifically, because it's very important. You can't just assume Toronto. You can't just assume even Scarborough or Etobicoke. You have to know specific areas. And what excuse, if I may speak frankly and very politely, at this point, if you're a buyer or you've been thinking of entering the market, I don't know what you're waiting for. The rate cut already happened. There's probably going to be more. Are you going to wait for another one? Like, since your question, what exactly are you waiting? What excuse are you going to run into at this point? Because you kind of have to look yourself in the mirror sometimes and think, okay, why am I not in the market? What specifically am I waiting for? I'm waiting for the prices to drop. We're at 23,000 active listings and the prices are pretty much the same as they have been, certainly higher than many parts than last year, depending on which area, and at least the same as last year. So the point is, at some point in time, you got to deal with reality, and you got to get and take advantage of coming lower interest rates and the fact that there's a lot of inventory out there. Maybe you won't be fighting with as many people in the house that you want to get. Keep that in mind, guys. Sincerely, I want to make sure you guys have that kind of information. Sellers, a few very important points. One, pricing is very, very important right now. There's no more playing around. You can't be pricing it too low because psychologically, buyers, as I mentioned last month, will just say, well, why am I going to look at you? I have 5 other ones in the area to look at. Guys, keep this in mind, please, because I still see this. I still see regular listings coming on with way too low of a price, thinking they're going to get, no. Multiple offers, possible. Offer date, still possible. Don't go too low with the pricing. It's very, very important. Know the competition. Offer dates are still possible in some areas. In some areas, they won't make any sense whatsoever. Have a realtor that knows what they're doing. Please, 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 because these part-timers, this isn't the market for it. Here's something that I wanted to show you guys specifically because presentation is absolutely enormously huge. And I still see people with horrific presentations, horrific photos, and places are sitting on the market. So here's the house that I sold that really, according to some other realtors, shouldn't have been sold in the first place. This room that you're looking at, this pretty bedroom that you're looking at, was dark and dingy with black curtains, and it didn't look anything like this. So a little bit of presentation change. This is staging, this is proper lighting, and look at the difference it made. And of course the house sold. Of course the house sold. Second example, very, very important because some of you are living in condos. This is a very dark area, part of the condo here. These beautiful pictures here. Notice on the picture on the left, 2 lamps and a light up top. We made sure there's tons and tons of lighting. And even when we took the photos, we made sure that they're as bright as humanly possible. And on the right, we cleared things up. They had a darker paint color. On the left, we didn't touch the paint. On the right, you see in the bedroom, we put in a specific kind of paint. I'm happy to tell you which kind we used to brighten it up to make it look much, much lighter. This condo sold in less than 2 weeks. In a building where other condos, even before we listed, are still sitting on the market right now. And that was sold, a month and a half ago. The point being, you do it right, you present it properly, you will get interest. But it's imperative to make the property look the best it possibly can, which includes a lot of painting and certainly staging. Here's one where staging made all the difference in a home. This sold in 3 days in areas where other homes which are much more updated are still sitting on the market for less money than we sold for. That's uncanny. It doesn't even make sense. But these two photos are probably the best example of it. This is a home that it has almost entirely all original things. Old original things. What the stagers did, first we painted the house. We got the house completely painted with a nice neutral color, a very light color, not quite white, but I can tell you what kind it is if you contact me. And what we did is we staged the property in such a way that it makes it look very nice. Those are actually nice pictures. It doesn't look modern per se. You can see the old hardwood on the bottom, but it gives a very different feel. Why did it sell in 3 days? Because we made it look very, very good, much better than it really originally did. And the few things we did is some staging, some painting, and of course a lot of decluttering and really, really good exposure. So there's this. Guys, if you're looking to sell a property, it's imperative you do this. Guys, seriously, like there's so much that can be done. I'm happy to do a consultation. You know, maybe you get your cousin in the business and you're probably going to lean towards them, get a second opinion, or if nothing else, contact me. I'll give you some tips as to what you can do to get your house sold like this. And as always, sellers, know your numbers. That's another reason to contact me. Where you're buying, if you're buying, and where you're selling, if you're selling, in this case as a seller, you have to know your numbers. You have to know what your things are going for. It's absolutely imperative. I'm amazed that I've seen, even in townhomes, you think a townhome complex where there are townhomes that's pretty much cookie cutter, they're the same thing. One sells for $100,000 less than all the other ones. And I can see, and I don't know the realtor, they're probably part-timer. I can see that they started low at a low price and they got well above asking, but their asking was too low in the first place. And then others are selling $100,000. They're not really much better than that one, and all in the same market. That's sad to me because that seller lost a lot of money. Maybe doing a favor for a cousin or a friend or work or something who happens to have a realtor license. Guys, you got to know your numbers. You have to know how much your house is worth, if nothing else. And lastly, guys, mention something very interesting that just came across my desk earlier today, literally today. Homeowners, investors, it's off topic, forgive me, but this is something called a rent guarantee program. I don't sell it. I don't get anything for it. I'm contacting me because I know I can get you a discount through my office. But honestly, have a look at this. It's a company called Single Key. It's something to the effect of a rent guarantee program, insurance related and that kind of thing. I mention this because I know I've had clients that are landlords. I've had horrible issues with tenants that either didn't pay or they do the professional tenant thing, months and months and months of no pay, and then they have all the right ways to get out of any kind of court situation. So this might be something to look at. Again, contact me, or my contact information is always at the bottom. Give me a shout. I'll give you more information on this. I'll just send you the PDF, and you guys can do with it what you will. But listen, if you're thinking of investing, or you are an investor, take a look at this. This is really, really interesting to me. And I think that more and more of this is going to happen. This is what happens in the free market. People start coming up with ideas to deal with even the most difficult of things. And of course, I have AskAndrew.Realtor, always working with a company that it markets predominantly the shopping malls. I'm trying to create kind of like a simple real estate experience for you guys with all the information you might need, all the contact info. I got a mortgage guy in there. I got an inspector in there. I got a lawyer in there. Have a look at that. And of course, feel free, shoot me over a message and let me know what you think of it. I'm constantly adding. I'll be adding videos to that. And last but not least, of course, guys, just valuable information about the market. Hopefully that wasn't too long for you guys, but the information here is very important because it's very specific to the market at hand. Everything needs to be done right now because things change in a daily and a weekly basis. Please hit like and subscribe if you have a chance. And of course, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the market. And I'm sure we'll meet again in July of 2024. Take care, guys. Talk to you soon.